Right, what is
Okay.
your ugly point, Maui?
Yeah. This okay, so this obviously requires a huge disclaimer because I felt like something needed to be addressed about the whole Maniac accusations and everything like that. And I'm not this isn't about the right or wrong or guilty or innocent from my perspective whatsoever. I just need like to write one community narrative, and it's just that so frequently on a lot of the comment sections when all of this Maniac stuff was coming out was I think one of the most prevailing questions from fans was where is where is the evidence? Where is the evidence? And I feel like people are too used to living in this TMZ type world. Like we're gonna get like the Diddy camera or something like
Right.
that of what he did.
Okay.
Because but like that's through usually a leak, and usually someone faces almost like a jail time or a sentence for even leaking that at any
Oh,
point,
sure.
because the thing that people need to realize that regardless of who is right and wrong in the situation, I'm actually not taking an official stance on this podcast publicly about this kind of stuff. It's just simply that Blast has a right when they're conducting a private investigation to to respect the privacy of the accuser and the accused, and that publicly sharing that sort of evidence, whatever kind of evidence that they were fed at by the end of it, if they were to publicly share that, that would lead to them having there would be liability from the for the company for a variety of reasons that would just never be worth dealing with. Like them releasing a statement in itself is already probably more than they ever wanted to do, because I'm not gonna connect the dots for everybody, but I'm just gonna make this clear. Like this investigation seemed like it was already happening in the month leading up to that. That being said, the Hannah wanted to like get some more clarity and also bring it to the public eye, and so she like wanted to publish that statement publicly. And so like Blast already, by the way, like they didn't tell her anything, from at least from what she says, but Maniac was announced to work the fall groups. He didn't. Cadian took his spot. And no one there was no public information about that, and it never needed to be public. It never actually needed to be. It could have been a silent move away from Maniac, from Blast, and we would have never known about that because Blast did what a company should do that has liability, that could be sued, and didn't reveal publicly what was happening. The big disclaimer again is like I'm being hired by Blast, so I'm obviously my this is like maybe some people might be like this is lightly shilly, but it's also like this is just how companies work. If you have ever worked with a company that has HR, like this is how HR things are handled. If Joe Schmo at Pepsi at a Christmas party harasses Sally, then it's not up to Pepsi to publish on their public Twitter that there's any investigation going on. It's just that Joe would either get a huge slap on the wrist and a massive warning, or that they would just fire him. And then they aren't also in America even obliged if Joe Schmo then calls Coke to get a job. And Coke says, "Okay, we're going to call Pepsi because they're your last employer." Actually, from to even to again distance yourself with liability reasons, Coke isn't or Pepsi's not responsible at that point to say Joe Schmo did this at the winter party, which is why we're not working with him anymore. Like all of this stuff is like there's so many possible ways that you could find yourself liable as a company, and that the main thing is that like this is just a community response. Like why is there no public evidence? Because Blast would only hurt themselves by releasing that. Like that's basically it at this point. So I just wanted to make that abundantly clear, and I would just say obviously be careful in like responding to this point, because this is just how companies operate that have a bottom line and have lawyers attached to them and an HR department attached to them. It's not a I'm not making a claim one way or the other about who's right or wrong, but I'm just saying that what Blast did is how real companies handle these issues.
Yeah, I think it is just kind of a symptom of sort of what you say, like the instantaneous world that we kind of live in, where people very naively and very, um, unintelligently, I suppose, kind of look at it from a perspective of like, well, if there was evidence, it would be like instantly posted to corroborate everything, and it's like that's just not how it works. And I think that as you kind of touch on, I've just sort of reread the statement and everything, that Hannah put things out to kind of shed that light because it looked like it wasn't going to be shared by anyone else, really. So, and I think
it looked like she was trying to put the fire to Blast's feet, as it were, right? And force him to do
a little
something,
bit, right? That
yeah,
she went through the apparatus and wasn't really happy with the way that had turned out. And then also, I think that people really don't fathom or understand, and maybe because, again, they are a little more toxic, younger, whatever, how incredibly challenging like that first step is for someone that's been through something like, any kind of level of like abuse. It's really not an easy thing to do, and I think that's why there is a lot of this siding with the accuser and whatnot, and that yes, you maybe have to play it carefully is where our arguments can kind of come in, but then you also see, not 48 hours later the whole thing's sort of done. So really, really difficult kind of level, I think, to hit. And yeah, just it felt so strange, like community wise, why there was so many kind of people as well, I think is the big thing that came out for my money. I don't really have too much to add on top of what Maui said, but just to kind of corroborate that it shouldn't have to go that way. Like it's been put into the open court, as it were, for kind of a reason. And then you let the open court sort of work through it, and it did ultimately, and we didn't need, like, what sort of, I think is the kind of question as well around it is like, what kind of evidence would they want? There were still people towards the end of all this that were asking like to see hard evidence, and it's like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? I remember as well, maybe a little tidbit here and whatnot. I got in, and one of the first things they said to me at the after party, didn't see anything that happened, right? One of the first things they said to me was, no pictures, no cameras. And I was like, all right, fair enough. Because there were people there that wouldn't want those kinds of, things like...
By the way, that's a totally non-sinister reason.
Whatever,
there's an obvious reason why you don't want that. Who the fuck wants to be getting drunk and have someone taking pictures constantly of you, like with a flash on? Like, that's actually a totally standard thing to expect, Scriv. Yeah. In fact, I'll even say, I even know talent that sometimes when fans come up when they're drunk and have to go like, no pictures, mate. Like, I'm not right now. Like, I'm not the right time for that. It's not appropriate, is it? Yeah, so that's not even a sinister thing. You're right. That's just almost like the sort of unspoken rule, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I think they just kind of, because I was a little bit like in my position, I'm not as well known. I can't just kind of, walk in and be like, oh, it's that guy or whatever. But there were there were players and stuff there. You know what I mean? And I think those especially maybe wouldn't want to be there or be seen or be talked or whatever, given the way they may have just performed at the event kind of thing or whatever it might be, So I think that it just comes at like a really ridiculous angle. Like you say, that it is also something that is expected, that it's a little bit taboo to kind of go in there and whatever. I'm not going to play on that, but yeah, I think that it just felt very, very strange from like some members of the community. And you see as well, it's like maybe not members of the community, but people sort of posting about it, and then it would really sort of go off. And as I say, there were still people like asking towards the end, so a little bit of an ill point in a way, and definitely ugly for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I'm only going to talk about this through the abstract of like the concept Maui's talking about of when people demand evidence or what they think is even possible legally. I mean, there's an obvious proxy I'll even do it through, which I'll mainly actually discuss a different case that was a few months ago, which was obviously that famous Dr. Disrespect thing that came out and all the thing where people say, why didn't the people who said they had the evidence come out with it, and why didn't they leak it, and why didn't they show the screenshots, and can I see the conversations? So I'll put that out there, because by the way, one thing I will never ever do is think about the fact that all the content I produce, except my Substack, is free anyway. No one pays 1 cent for this. You aren't the customer. By the way, if you're the person watching this video, the customer technically is whoever the sponsor is. You're actually just someone who gets to enjoy the content for free. You're a weird, like, middle party in this whole equation. So I'm not a jukebox. You are not obliged to know. I am not obliged to tell you what I think about that topic. In fact, I even think that is an indictment of how sick society is, that you actually want to, like, almost like a type of pornography, claw over like all the details. Like, well, did you know? And what did you know? And what did they say? And why haven't you said this and say the thing I want you to say? It's like, nah, I don't even like the fact this topic's even on this show, by the way. What's it got to do with Counter-Strike? Not a single thing. This was nothing, not a single thing happened in a Counter-Strike server or had to do with the Counter-Strike match or to do with teams or the way they play against each other. It's just drama. Now, for the people involved, it's very serious drama. That's why, by the way, in my opinion, this is a matter for, yes, the police. This is a matter for tournament organisers. I think you could say there's a mixture of, depends what the role of the person being the victim here is, but potentially this could be a player safety issue, this could be a talent issue, it could just be a fan issue, people attending the events. I think that's why there is a serious reason why tournament organisers do have some level of liability if they arrange a party, if they arrange an event. Obviously, yes, it does matter who they hire, not just for what they do on the mic or in the server. So I would just say this, if someone goes back, the reason why this topic is going to be a lot easier if you talk about the Dr. Disrespect story is, I think Richard Lewis on his YouTube channel even has a video, whenever that was it a month ago or 2 months ago, I forget how recently it was. Let's say it was 2 months ago. On Richard Lewis's YouTube channel, there's a video where I think he talks to Slasher and they talk about this exact topic, where he basically explains that, like, you don't even get it, guys. It's hard enough sometimes when there's just like corporate corruption to show like actual leaked documents and redacted things. If you want to make any kind of like a sexual harassment claim, you have to basically meet the highest possible legal standards of like evidence, etc., to be able to put anything out there, because otherwise you could be absolutely destroyed on a million fronts. Like, this isn't one of those ones, this is where I'm going to make a key point here, where even if spiritually you are right, if you don't have all the evidence and all your fucking sort of I's dotted and your T's crossed, you are going to be in so fucking deep shit. And so if people don't know, that's why in the Dr. Disrespect case, you will never see those conversations. You will never see the Twitch whispers. You will never even get to know the identity of the person or what happened. And it's with good reason. And I'll quickly just explain something that people might not get here, which is, when it comes to that sort of information, what you will be sued for is called defamation. And it actually depends whether you're in the UK or the USA. I don't know where these cases would be tried. It can be different depending on which it is. Like, I'll give you an example. I think off the top of my head, it's something weird. Like in America, the person making the claim has to like prove it's true. Whereas in the UK, it's like the other way around. Like the person who's claimed from has to like prove it wasn't the case. And so basically, however it works, I believe the way in the UK that's different is, in the UK, basically, you can say something that is true, but because it then does have the effect of making the person not get work, you can still be sued by them. You've essentially, even though it's true what you published, you ruined their rep. And in a case like this, by the way, Dr. Disrespect or Maniac, you would literally be denying them work if what they found was released, then stop them getting gigs. And they could very easily prove that, by the way. So depending on which country that's even tried in, you could actually lose, even though you published real evidence that the person really did do a crime. So it's not as simple as people think. And that's why I'll loop it back into the fan expectation. This is where you've watched too many movies and too many TV shows. What in reality you're saying, if I was to boil it down, is this. You personally, Joe Blogs, Joe Billy Nobody, who has no right to any information about any of this matter, thinks, but I want to know who the one who is bad is. So you think like we should bring the evidence to you. You get to watch it and go, well, here's what I think. I think this person's right or wrong. You don't, not only are you not the person who has that like actual like right, but literally no one owes you that. Nobody at all. In fact, here's the real black pill for you. You will never know in any of these cases who is actually totally right and totally wrong. You'll never see hard evidence. You weren't there. You will only ever be able to go off eyewitness testimony, basically. And at that point in time, you're just doing your own character evaluation of, do I believe this person? Does it sound plausible? What's the preponderance of evidence? Terms like that, right? Things like that. So at that point in time, look, that's actually enough, by the way. Here's what people don't get as well. There's a notion, Scriv, that like, but until we have it, how can we really decide? No, that's that's actually the point. One, if it's about legal matters, the police can take care of that. That's literally their job, not ours. That's not even Blast's job or any TO's job. Two, if you want to do the angle of should the TO employ the person anymore, well, actually for that one, you never needed hard evidence. You never even needed it to be true. You can choose, by the way, who you associate with and who you on a freelance contract base hire to do your events. So by the way, forget even if someone did or didn't do a crime. If you just heard someone's an arsehole and everyone doesn't like him, that's a reason enough to not hire him to your event. You can do that tomorrow. That's why actually the main issue here is just, does the TO cover the story up, or do they take action if they think something's been done? So I actually think in that sense, hasn't that all pretty much resolved itself? I think at this point, pretty much all ends are squared away. You might be sat at home going, but I want to know. You will never know, and you have to understand and accept that that is literally the default state. You will never get closure ever on this topic. The only people who hopefully do get closure are the people who are either the accused or the accused, depending on which way it plays out. And that's, again, again, not something where we're going to be the ones looking at what the information is. We're only ever going to hear third hand, this person did or didn't do it, or this, but here's the ruling. We're never going to actually even know the criteria, all the details. I will just say one last thing, and this is a general point for anyone in the future who might be in this situation. The one area I would give a piece of advice goes like this, because I saw people that were trying to make it like you can only sort of pursue these matters officially. No. One of the things that, as you said, Scriv, with the way this played out, one of the motivating factors does seem to be when someone went public with it, right? You don't have to only go and lodge an official complaint with the police or a TO, or publicly say what happened. There's a third option that was there the whole time, and that's what alarms me about this case. The third option is, if behind the scenes you're not getting any traction and you can't get the right people to listen to you, the third option is already go to journalists. If you go to journalists and you have 2-3 people and you have a bunch of stories and any kind of evidence, screenshots, timestamps, you have any of these things, that means at a minimum, now look, you are playing with fire here, you better know your story, it better all be legit. But essentially, that means even if the person doesn't get fired, doesn't get any legal action, you can sort of get the real truth out there. You can still do that. That's always a mechanism of journalism that is actually, I think, a social good, is the idea that, like, sometimes people do corporate corruption and get away with it, or they have some legal loophole, but if you know that they did it, it helps the wider community. People know not to hire that person and work with that person. I would just say that last point, which is don't ever underestimate that detail. By the way, to same for pro players, if you want to make a totally abstract thing, nothing to do with this case, if you're a pro player, you're being fucked over and you can't complain to Valve, or you go to a journalist, show them all the evidence, get people that corroborate your story, and again, you can sometimes sort of pull the levers of power, as it were, a little bit via social influence. You can actually have an impact that way. So I would just say on the last one, that's the thing I hope we level up as a community. It's like there was also ways the word could have gotten out there without it having to go through these means and this massive social media drama like this. So I hope in the future people also consider reach out to, by the way, some of the people who reported on this story, they've shown they've got a precedent, they'll do the story. So I would say you reach out to these people proudly. By the way, as far as I know, Richard Lewis always has open DMs on Twitter. You can always DM him. He reads them all, even all the stupid ones. So if anyone actually is in real need of help, I guarantee you he will reply and he will probably do the best that he can. So that's my last one on that one.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.